Pat yourself on the back because you are right here, right now, for a reason. Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will empower ourselves and others to live lives with more passion and purpose. How you doing this morning, Jared?
Good morning, Ollie. I'm good, man. Fall's here, so it's cool in the morning and then hot in the afternoon again. So that's kind of nice. Life's good. How are you doing?
Doing well. I'm doing well. I'm excited. We are entering into the fall, the fourth quarter, end of year stuff. We're going to put 2020 behind us pretty soon.
Should we, though?
Yeah.
You think so? See, I don't know. I'm torn on that, man. I think that's going to tie into today's episode. I think there's a lot we could be learning if we don't rush through this. As much as we want to get away from the pain that's causing us, I do think it has the potential to be one of those watershed moments where you look back and be like, oh, yeah, that's what we're learning then.
Mm-hmm. Definitely lots of lessons.
Yeah, painful ones for sure.
What'd you think of Is It Too Late to Be Happy?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever too late to be happy if you choose it. I just think like part of what we're being shown now is you really got to look at yourself to be happy. You can't depend on everything external.
Yeah.
You know, and find internal happiness and maybe quit basing happiness on the things in the world and more about the people.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I understand that and I agree with it. It's a struggle at times for sure because there is so much going on around us.
Yeah.
What about you?
Very similar belief, going back to things that we know can produce happiness internally, right? Prayer, gratitude, meditation, being out in nature, spending time with loved ones. But again, like you said, it's a challenge when there's a lot of obstacles around being able to do that. A lot of places that you can't go with big groups of people, things like that. But never too late.
No, but I agree with you on that. And all that stuff you talked about is internal. And I think that's the key for people to realize is if you're unhappy because all this stuff's going on externally, you're giving up way too much of your control. You're giving up way too much of your power. Filter that out. Quit paying attention to it or digest it smaller. And that's the thing I struggle with is because you want to know what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
but you start knowing, then you end up knowing too much, and then it throws you off. So it's a balance, but yeah, it's internal.
Yep. So episode 80.
Wow. Episode 80.
Are you passing the test?
Interesting. What do you think?
I don't know, man. I usually don't look at things in life as tests too often.
Really?
Yeah.
So that was the first question I had is how do you identify a test? And how do you, when you see things coming your way or you're in a difficult time,
Mm-hmm.
you never process that as a test?
That's not a word that comes to mind.
What would you call it? Like a challenge?
I like the word opportunity. I look at everything as an opportunity. And even when it sucks and it's shitty, I look for where's the opportunity here? Where's the silver lining? Where's the lesson? I'll use the word lesson sometimes.
Yeah.
Lesson is a word I use. But yeah, test is one of those words that doesn't really resonate with me at this point in my life, at least.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting word because just the word test itself generally indicates pass fail.
Mm-hmm.
Or some kind of grading mechanism.
Yeah, for sure.
Which, as we've talked about before, a lot of times as adults, we don't grade ourselves. We don't own up to our mistakes. We don't own up to our shortcomings and work on them. Because once you get out of school, you're done taking tests.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think at times the world tests you.
Mm-hmm.
And how you phrase it, I think is up to the individual, but I think too many of us shy away from those tests, right? So like you see an obstacle as an opportunity to learn. You could say that's a test, right? Will you shy away, back away from this, or do you accept it and go forward? And I think many of us, especially in our country where it's easy to be comfortable, it's easy to get kind of lazy, we back away from those. Right? We've talked about that fear that we may fail, that fear that we may not be as good as we used to be. You know, like health is a perfect example to me. Why are Americans so obese? Right? We have an astounding percentage of our population that's obese, not just overweight, but obese. Yet we have the most information available to us. We have gyms available to us. We have the ability to work out available to us all the time. It's not that they don't have the information. It's just they're not choosing to take that test.
Yeah.
That obstacle, right? They're not taking the opportunity to challenge themselves. And so I think that's why, for me, that word test is interesting, especially in police work, right? Like even in police work where you have generally police officers, men and women, are alpha type personalities. They want to be in charge. They're going to step forward. But you'd be amazed. You put them out on a shooting range or on a mat and you tell them it's a qualification. Just the word qualification induces stress to where some people don't perform like they would normally would. And it's qualification is just another word for what? Test. You pass or fail.
Yeah.
Right? Because when we say we're being tested, there's like, oh my gosh, I'm being judged. Oh. Right? You get the anxiousness. Like kids nowadays, it was nothing. We never even heard of this when I was a kid, but now there's test anxiety is a thing. So you can get accommodations for your test. You don't have to take it around everybody else.
Really?
Yeah. Huh. Oh, yeah. That's in schools all the time. I hear it all the time from kids, especially like young students that are coming to the gym. Like, well, he's got a lot of anxiety around being tested. And I'm like, well, he's going to be tested. He comes to this gym. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to fix that. Because I think we just kind of shy away from that word.
Yeah.
And we shy away from having to, quite honestly, look at ourselves and what we've talked about probably in like episode 4 or something, that self-assessment.
Right. And that's, for me, where the word test comes into play is I'm constantly testing myself with challenges, with goals, with accomplishments. However, when I look at this question of how do you identify a test in your life, it kind of, I think of people saying God's testing you kind of thing, of like,
maybe
God's testing your patience, God's testing your this. And I look at it as, again, an opportunity to where that idea always doesn't come to me as like, this is a test from God.
Right. So for me, here's where I differ. A test, like an opportunity, is something to me that comes to me. I'm like, oh man, this is a great opportunity. I'm gonna go do this. A test is when it comes to me, I'm like, fuck, I don't want to do this, but I know I have to.
What's an example like of a recent test you've had that's appeared in your life?
Man, I feel like I'm being tested constantly right now. Quite honestly, probably one of the more recent tests is like I was talking to you, I want to delete all social media because I find it to be, right, I told you, like it's negative. I don't feel good doing it. But then I talked to you and I talked to Andrea, and they're like, dude, you've been building your community for years. Social media is how they look to you here. They look like people literally watch what you put out because it makes them feel better. It challenges their. So that's a test. I don't necessarily want to go to social media, but I feel like I have an obligation, kind of a responsibility, because people have begun to trust me there. So the test is, will I show up? Right? It's not an opportunity. Right? I've already created the opportunity. To me, it is a test. Will I show up? Will I put myself in a toxic place where people just seem to jump at the dime to fight with everything, knowing that one or two people really need my message? Or do I shy away because I don't want to do it? That's a test.
Interesting. So when I think of that, I think of two opportunities. I think of, you have the opportunity here to continue forward, to be putting out content, to be positively impacting several hundred people a day that see it.
Yeah.
Not every post may get 100 plus likes, but
Right.
I'm pretty sure probably 100 plus people will see that.
Yeah.
In a matter of seconds, you have an opportunity there to impact hundreds of people. On the flip side, you also have the opportunity to delete your social media or move
disengage.
away. And go into a more silent period of time in your life where you're going more internally. So that's kind of how my brain registers it.
Yeah.
But I do see, I understand what you're saying. It's, but it is interesting how much power words carry.
For sure.
And how they can really, Courtney and I were actually having a discussion of this, of how much weight and value we give to certain words.
Yep.
And how we really have to choose wisely with our words, because they can inform thought patterns that we're having just by the choice of words we're using.
Absolutely. The two words that come to mind for that are have and get. Right? If I say, hey, you have to do this.
Oh, yeah.
There's resistance. Or, well, why do I have to do this? Versus, hey, you get to do this. Like, oh, this is an opportunity, right? I get to do this, right? You don't have to train. You get to train. You don't have to eat healthy. You're blessed to have the opportunity to eat healthy.
Yeah. It's such a basic one that I always forget. I'm always
Huge.
like, I have to train.
Yeah.
I have to make weight. I have to.
It's great for parenting kids.
Yeah.
Right? If you tell a kid, hey, you have to clean your room, there's going to be resistance. Hey, you get to clean your room. That means you got an abundance of stuff. We got to get organized. Same thing's going to happen. Same action takes place, just how you frame it. But for me, that's kind of how I identify if I'm being tested. If there's things come on my way that I don't want to do, but I know I should, that's kind of a test.
So what's your natural response to a test? Like when you know you're being tested, and your definition of being tested, how do you usually respond?
Man, I would say most of the time, well, Andrew would probably tell you, like, when I'm first tested, I'll be like defensive about it and be like, whoa, 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 whoa. But then if I sit with it, then I'll come up with a response. So I guess my initial response is to challenge back on why I'm being tested, why we're tested right now, and then sit and think about it and come up with an answer. I've always been that way, though.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's a weird kind of a dichotomy, because I'm usually a very opportunist. Like I see all kinds of possibilities. But there's other times, man, when things are just, you're being tested, you're just like, God dang, why do I have to do this again? Like, I feel like we've already done this before.
Yeah.
And that's, what about you? So like so I know you see them as opportunities, not tests, but what about, well, you've been going through a huge test with your business.
Yeah.
Right? Partnerships didn't quite work out. Rebranding of stuff, talk about selling, interested in selling, nope, now I'm going to build it. Now you're rebuilding a team. Like, to me, that's all a big test.
Yeah.
So how do you process that naturally? Like, what's your first instinct?
My first instinct when I feel that I'm being tested is to crush that test, blow past the barriers, go, like, even in, like, athletics is a great analogy. Like, even if I'm on a run and then it starts to go uphill, I try and speed up.
Yep.
Or I'm feeling tired, I want to react, keep going. Or someone's testing my patience or testing my honor and integrity, I want to prove them wrong right away, right? But I think over the years I've learned that not all tests are worth taking. Not all tests are worth investing my time in to pass. So sometimes if someone's trying to test me, or some challenge is really testing me, sometimes I can identify, it's time to walk away. It's not even worth taking this test.
Sure.
Or maybe I know deep down inside, like, I got this. I don't even need to take it, kind of thing. Really, I feel that the only test that I will take, if I'm taking a test, I'm gonna ace it. I'm gonna do everything in my power to ace it, and I'm only gonna take it if I feel that I need to prove it for me.
That's huge.
Yeah.
But I think the other part of that too is you're going to prepare.
Yeah.
You're going to research, and I think that's kind of how, how I process things is initially I may not be excited for the test, which I don't think anybody walks into a classroom and like, oh man, that's a freaking test today. That's the best thing ever.
Well, unless you're thoroughly prepared, that's a great feeling.
But you're prepared.
Yeah.
Right.
When you're thoroughly prepared,
and
you're let's go.
So that's a great message to share with our community, right? Because we are all going to be tested. But how are you prepared?
Mm-hmm.
How are we prepared, right? Because usually, and maybe that's why, if something comes my way and it's a test and I'm like, oh, dude, I got this. Like, I've been reading books. I've been doing the things to prepare. It's easy. But if it hits me, I'm like, shit, I knew I should have been preparing. I should have been doing this differently.
Yeah.
Like, one of the biggest tests you'll face in life, health.
Mm-hmm.
Right? All of a sudden, your life's going on. You go to the doctor appointment for something, and they tell you something else is completely wrong. And you're like, shit, I knew I should have been eating healthy. I knew I shouldn't have been excess here or excess there.
Yeah.
Working out more here. You're tested, but you weren't prepared necessarily.
Right. And that's when you have regret, shame, even guilt for not preparing. It's a shitty feeling.
Yeah.
And everybody knows that feeling. Everyone knows that feeling.
Which is why I go back to the beginning, is adults will shy away from tests a lot. Because we know we're not preparing the way we should.
I think it's because there's so much to prepare for these days.
But let me challenge you on that. Is there really that much to prepare for? Let's take our current world right now. Hate, division, disease, pandemic, riots, blah, 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 all the shit they feed you with.
Mm-hmm.
And by they, I say social media, the media in general, just the current feel of the world. Do you really need to prepare for all that?
Depends on what you believe. So I guess I could rephrase my statement and say,
no, I don't want you to rephrase it. I want you to stay by it. Because I think you're right. But you have generally been probably the most steady, happiest dude during this whole time. Even more than me. Like, and I can feel it. Like, there's some days you come fucking bebopping down the sidewalk. You're like, hey, what's that? I'm like, fuck, he's happy again. Like, I have not seen him be pissed off about this yet. You have never come to me and been like, hey, dude, you won't believe what I just saw on YouTube. Like, there's this conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're generally happy. Because you've simplified your preparations.
Yeah.
Right? Think about, like, what are you doing? Like, those beads.
Affirmations.
Mean something to you. You're reading. You're around people that love you. You're traveling. Like, you are literally doing, quite honestly, what I would say are the simplest things to prepare for something that nobody knew could happen to us.
Yeah. So most of us believe that we need to prepare for so much. I think what I've done is exactly what you said. I've simplified what I need to prepare for. I mean, I tell people, and I get a lot of heat from this, but I have not voted for a United States president in my entire life. When I turned 18, I didn't. It was after that war in Lebanon, when I got stuck there and had my whole news experience and really stopped distrusting the news after that experience and stopped really trusting and didn't feel the need to prepare for politics, to prepare for conversations about current events that are on CNN. And I really decided to simplify what I felt I needed to be prepared for, my health, my financial well-being, my relationships, my rituals, fitness, all these things. And yeah, I think you're right, to where it can be overwhelming when we feel we need to pass so many tests. The test of how you look. What are the neighbors going to think about me? What are my coworkers going to think about me? What are so many things? How do I look on social media? so many tests that we believe we must pass, when in reality, we really decide what tests matter.
See, that I love it, dude. I love it. And because here's where that leads perfectly to. How many people are going to wake up this morning and their whole mission is to get everybody they talk to vote for their guy?
Yeah.
Knowing, and quite honestly, in 4 years it makes no fucking difference because you're gonna have another new guy, and then you're gonna be all about that guy or that lady and argue, right? So that's not a test. But in the meantime, instead of going out arguing about that, what if they were working on their fitness? What if they were reading? You know what I mean? Like, I think you're right. The world at times will throw all these things at us. To me, that's a test. Will you be distracted by all these things, or will you stay true to your course? And I'll be honest, I think I failed at times during this prolonged test because I have gotten distracted and I have put too much energy into certain things that are way beyond my control.
Well, I think we all have.
But if you're honest with yourself, I can say I have not been my best.
Mm-hmm.
I need to do more in this area and quit going over here.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but I don't think a lot of people will either be aware to recognize that or be honest enough to hold themselves accountable and try to come back. Because the more distracted we are, we're losing, quite honestly. Right? If I'm super distracted, I'm not rebuilding my businesses that were closed. So then what happens? My businesses fail. If I'm distracted, I'm not studying things that make me feel good, which means I'm not growing. Right? And as much as we want 2020 to be over for certain things, I would argue that you also need to make sure you're growing during this time, whether it's your relationship or any of the things we've talked about 1,000 times. Because just wishing something would be over, we know what happens when you spend time wishing this would be over to get to that. Wish this would be. Mm-hmm. You're unfulfilled.
Yeah.
And you look back and go, man, I wasted 6 months, or I wasted 12 months because I wasted an entire year.
Right.
Wishing it was over.
Yeah. I mean, if you can't be happy right now, then you're not going to be happy after all of this, after 2020.
What are you? Are you going to be happy when COVID magically disappears? You're going to be happy when your person wins the presidency? No, you're not going to be fucking happy. Because you're going to find new problems, or they're going to feed you more things for you to be pissed off about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So to me, that's why I think the next question is the current situation different from all others? To me, it is, because it's a mass. It's not just one thing. Like, if it's just COVID, I could say, well, I don't believe in that. Like, what you tell me doesn't match. I'm done with it. I'm moving on. But it's COVID. It's race riots. It's police brutality. Well, it's all this stuff. It's like everything at once to try to splinter,
mm-hmm.
to distract. So to me, this is like one of the ultimate tests that I've faced in my life, because it's so much coming at us. It changes frequently. We don't know the answers. And for me, my kids are old enough to question things.
Mm-hmm.
So not only is it an ultimate test for me and what do I believe and what's really important for me, but I also get to listen to what's important for them. And a lot of times it's different than what I think, which it should be, right? When you're in your late 40s versus your late teens, you should see the world differently.
For sure.
So it's an ultimate challenge. Now, do we pack up and quit and allow everything to fail, or do we rise up and stand our ground a little bit?
Got to rise up, baby.
I think so. But it looks different.
It looks different, but I think it's the same in a lot of ways of previous times. For example, we just had 9/11 pass. And I think it's interesting how we have a lot of things of always remember, never forget. And I remember that day. And that time period, especially for me, as a half Arab man with an Arabic name, Ali Abu Salam, after that was the first time I ever experienced racism, prejudice, hated going to the airport. We always got pulled, extra security checks, you know. So for me, that was a very strange time, very similar to this, of constantly being tested, having a lot of adversity in life, but in a different way. No, we weren't wearing masks, but I did still feel isolated and thoroughly tested. And I think so did the world, like on a global level. So, and again, that was everything that was in the news, right? Oh, terrorists and all this stuff, to where it's always something, you know, there's always, it's very rare to where there's ever consecutive months of no really big bad things on the news, right? Whether that's, oh, vaporizers are killing your children, to terrorists are attacking the U.S., to there's a global pandemic, to racism is always thrown in there every couple of years. There's always something really negative to, I think it's different in the fact that we've never had masks before. We've never had this social distancing and all this shit, but we are always constantly being tested.
Yeah, I would just say this time is different because it's literally everybody, right, around the world. Every country seems to be impacted with this. There's protests going on all over the world. And 9/11 was pretty much a U.S. event, right? It's when we came together and we're like, we're going to go take it to these terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
Well, right now, what I see happening is neighbor versus neighbor, community versus community, American versus American. So it's much different for me. But yes, you're always going to be challenged. You're always going to be tested. I think this time period we're going through right now has the ability to really stand out because it's so many tests at once. It's so much, I would say, overwhelming dislike and discourse, that how we respond is really going to shape the future for our kids and our grandkids.
So what do you think the tests are in this time? What are we being tested on?
I would say one of the biggest tests is how much you rely on technology and the government for your basic needs, right? Like for me and my family, that's one of the big things we were exposed to, is like, when they go to the store, I have a family of 5, and my teenage son eats a lot like teenage boys do. So when I go to the store and you tell me I'm allowed 2 packages of ground beef and I only shop once a week, that's not going to work. I'm only allowed 1 chicken, right? So for us, one of the big things that we've learned, and I think this could be different for everybody, but for us, one of the big lessons we learned is we need to be more self-reliant. I don't need to have, and honestly, an appreciation for our farmers, right? I don't need to have the grocery store supply everything. I should be able to grow some of my own stuff. I need to have plans for how do I get my own water? How do I take care of myself? And not in a, I guess in a survivalist way, but also in a, holy shit, when they told us to stay home and we can only do certain things, that really exposed how dependent I was.
Right.
You know, so I think for me, it's much more independence, right? Not if the internet goes down, do I have books to read?
Mm-hmm.
Just stuff like that. And I think that could be a message for a lot of people, is more self-reliance for your education, for your fitness, for your food supply. And with that, maybe you're a person that doesn't want to have to worry about getting your own water, and you're going to live in a city forever, and that's fine. But you become more self-reliant just in your own life, whatever that looks like. So that's the biggest thing that I've learned in this test, is I don't want to be dependent on a ton of systems or other people that can just make rules with no input from me that drastically affect my family's lives.
Yeah. Goes back to really, what do we want to be prepared for?
Right. And thankfully we've prepared, right? Like I didn't have
you prepared. got the Airstream. You
I
got
know.
now.
I didn't have a ton of bills. I didn't have a ton of debt. So when they shut my businesses down, while it sucked, I didn't have to worry about, can I buy food? You know what I mean? Like it's just little things. So we were prepared, right? I had my health. I didn't need to go to the doctor. I didn't need overpriced prescriptions. You know what I mean? Like, so I think to me that's the results that I'm getting out of this, is that sometimes simple is better. And just like you said earlier, it feels like at times there's way too much to prepare for. So simple it down. Can I feed my mind? Can I feed my body? Am I moving my body? Am I loving the people that I'm around? Those are good results from this test. I think about if everybody loved the people they're around, a lot of this shit wouldn't be happening.
Yeah. That's been the biggest lesson for me in how I'm responding. Because when a lot of this stuff was first going down, I felt that I needed to be on the side and voice my opinion and you know, well, these doctors are saying this, or well, actually Black Lives Matter is actually owned by some racist white guys, you know, and like, oh wait, well actually, and really getting into the all of these conspiracy theories and trying to learn more, and eventually I got back to one of the Dale Carnegie principles: the best way to win an argument is to avoid it, and decided that what I want to do every single day is positively impact people, whether that's through a post on social media, whether that's asking the cashier, hey, what was the best part of your day, whether that's doing a Dat Grat interview. And I don't want to be contributing to the divisiveness, the hatred. To me, that's something that I don't need to thoroughly prepare for. I don't need to know every single statistic on COVID-19. I don't need to know all of the statistics on who are the founders of Black Lives Matter and all these things. What I'm going to do is play my role, continue to preach about the things that are helping me in my life: gratitude practice, meditation, fitness, building community, podcast, whatever it is that's helping me, mala beads, affirmations, all these things, instead of bite on that hate bait, you know, of really, oh, the election, all this stuff that really, do you have to really be prepared for it? Do you have to be informed on it, right? No, you don't. So that's kind of my biggest lesson here, is that when things come up, and it's hard though, it's hard because you see very emotionally charged videos or statements. Like, you know, when I saw the George Floyd video for the first time, I felt that anger and rage towards that cop to me of like, get the fuck off his neck. You know, that when I first saw that video, I remember being like, what the hell is that? That's so fucked up. But again, you only see that content that's going to emotionally charge you up. And sometimes it can be very difficult to not be like, you know, you don't need to go to social media and post this and be like, fuck all cops, or whatever, however you're feeling in that moment. And that has been a big challenge, but a good lesson to consume it, make what you want out of it. But ultimately, like, I want to be that positive force, that positive influence. I want people to feel uplifted being around me or reading content that I put out. I don't want to add to kind of right now the collective weight that we're putting out.
Yeah, no, that's very good. That's well said. I agree with that. It's but you're absolutely right. Bait is a fantastic word. They're trying to lure you into their game. The other thing for me, man, is that during this time, I really found a new appreciation for nature and the role it plays in our world. Because, you know, being a fairly urban kid my whole life, you know, I didn't want to do camping. I always told Andrea we'd live like in a loft and we'd just be downtown. We'd walk for dinner and games. And now I look and I'm like, nope, at least for this next period in life, we're going to move away.
Yeah.
And instead of having to drive to find nature, I want to live in nature and have people drive to come see us. You know what I mean? And not to isolate or anything in a negative way, but just to really appreciate, because Earth fixes itself constantly if we quit messing with it. You know, and it's a fascinating system to watch how each animal plays their role in the overall health of our world. And
Yeah.
to just be out there and to wake up and just see it every day. And yeah, I'm excited, you know. So I think, quite honestly, for us, looking back on this year, there's going to be pain. There's going to be some things we missed because of rules and stuff. But there's going to be also a lot of discovery. You know, discovery of different passions we didn't know we had, and strengthening of relationships. And I think that's what people really need to look at. For me, is you're being tested. Like, what will come out of this for you? What comes out of this? Are you so caught up in all the bait, as you said, that you're losing family members over this, that you're losing all your friends over this, that you're going to let your business sink because you're so distracted studying all this?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you going to simplify? And to me, that's ultimately, that's a great word. How do I know if I will pass this test? Is if I come out on the backside, my life's simpler. I'm less dependent on people for things. I control more of it, and it's simple. I move my body, I feed my mind, I love the people around me, and I enjoy nature. And if I can do that, that's a pretty good win, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like passing the test right there.
What do you say? Like, as you look back on 2020, when it's over with, what do you hope to see that you've learned or taken advantage of from this opportunity?
I think a lot of it ties back to the last episode, that you're always in control of your happiness.
Yeah.
You know, you're always in control of what you're defining as your purpose. I forgot if it's a man's search for purpose or a man's search for meaning, but the concentration camp survivor.
Yeah.
Worst possible environment scenario you're in. You're a Holocaust victim, you know, in these concentration camps. He was still able to find purpose, you know, and find little moments of happiness in the most horrible, hatred-full, darkest situation,
Right.
imaginable. And I think that if I can, thank you, by the way, for that compliment of being jolly on the sidewalk.
Dude, you always are, man.
If I can consistently be that way, and don't get me wrong, I have my days too, where I'm sad, I'm down, I'm mad, whatever. But if I can have more of these happy, high energy days than otherwise, that's a win for me, especially during times like this when my business is being tested, my social life is being heavily tested, like you said, everything is being tested, but I'm choosing to see these as an opportunity to grow. I know if, we make it out of this business, out of this year, have a good year, dude, yeah, my business survived COVID.
Right.
I'm really going to propel once things stabilize a little bit more in order for growth, right? Oh, look at all my relationships. And I fell victim to it too. I lost an employee because of an argument about stuff on the news, right? And that was a good lesson of like, why was I even getting into that?
Yeah.
But blessing in disguise, but still just a good lesson of like how much is at stake when you choose to argue. You really have to choose your battles wisely. And I feel that a lot of what we see on the mainstream media is worth taking a second look at before really choosing to battle about.
Or not even looking at it all, to be honest.
That too.
I mean, yeah, that's a constant battle there. Yeah, so for me, man, the simple life is a huge lesson I learned here. And the ability to control a lot of variables that previously I didn't even worry about.
Mm-hmm.
Just because honestly, and so I create a simpler life. And what is the end result of that? Is more freedom. Freedom to travel, not as tied down to certain things.
Mm-hmm.
I need less money to live, which means I have more money to give.
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, there's so many good things that'll come out of this, but you don't get there by looking at the end of the counter wishing it was over. You only get there by answering the test each day.
Yeah. Yeah. Every day is an opportunity.
Yeah. And just because you struggle one day doesn't mean you shouldn't get up and get after it the next day. Like, it's going to happen. Like, I've definitely had my share, more downs during this time than I remember in a long time.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, okay, we have very positive things in motion.
Mm-hmm.
And very positive things that I've learned.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Me too. It's been tough. I mean, not having any trade shows, no social events, none of that stuff. Like, that's what I thrive on, not only for my business, but also as a very extroverted person for my psyche.
Yeah.
You know, we had the gym closed for months. Like, don't get me wrong, there's been a lot of challenge and adversity, but what good is talking about how shitty it's been?
Right.
Right? What does that do for you? It
Yeah.
keeps that shitty weighted feeling around. We can talk about it all day and, oh, it's been shitty, or we can have these conversations that we're having and look at the lessons that we're learning. Look at, if we want to, look at this as a test and how we're passing, how it's going to look on the other side of that. So,
yeah,
love it.
Cool. You got some purposeful practice to wrap them up, Mr. Ali?
Yes, I do. So part 1, reflect on how you have been tested during this time. Part 2, how have you responded both instinctively and after thought? 3, are you happy with your response and would you make any changes? 4, what do you need to do to pass this test? And 5, email your practice to us at onpurpose.official@gmail.com.
Awesome. And remember, please like, subscribe on YouTube, share the podcast on the podcast apps you're listening to. And if you want to join even deeper into the community, please get over to our Patreon page. We would love to have your support as we continue to push these messages and all of our messages forward on episode 80 and beyond.
And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.